Hello, friends. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the With Her Two Hands podcast, where each week we celebrate the women who build, fix, and make the things that make the world go round with her own two hands. I am your host, Bogey. I am a master auto mechanic by trade, but this series is about celebrating and normalizing women in all sorts of trades, all of those very traditionally very male dominated fields where women make up generally less than 2% across the United States, across the trades. Some are better, some are worse, but they're all below 10%, and some are as low as 1%. So we're in this game to change that, to normalize it. And I thank all of you who have been coming back each week to meet these incredible women for being a part of that journey, part of normalizing seeing women in the trades. And tonight we've got a guest that I'm really excited to meet. This woman is a true trailblazer. I've always said that I would not be allowed to do what I do if it weren't for women like tonight's guest, who really were trailblazers and made a path within the trades to even make it possible for women to try. Right back when she was coming up, girls were not allowed in Votech school. I get comments a lot that maybe there's not more women in the trades because maybe women just don't like the trades. And the answer always to that is it wasn't that long ago when women were not allowed to be in the trades. So that's the reality. And we want to change that. But tonight's guest is one of the people who made this all possible. Now, I do have to let you know, if you saw the advertisement and the info screen for tonight's episode, you know that our guest tonight is going to be anonymous. So we're using not her real name. Lovely Miss Lacey Nelson is not her real name. We are going to have a static image for her, unfortunately. And that is due to some unfortunate situations in her life that she's going to tell us about. But I wanted to let you guys know. But I am excited to meet her and hear her story nonetheless. So without further ado, I'm going to stop blabbing and bring the lovely Miss Lacey Nelson on. Hello, darling. How are you?
Hello to everybody. Thank you so much for asking me to participate.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for saying yes. It is a huge honor to meet you virtually, at least. I'd love to meet you in real life one day. Can I just say I hope you're all right with me cursing. You're a badass.
Well, that's that's actually a compliment considering some of the names I was called earlier on. Yeah, one of the things I'd like to, kind of say straight away is that when I started in the early 70s, and people need to know that I'm retired. I just celebrated my 70th birthday, and
Happy birthday.
I'm still doing it. I'm still wrenching. I'm a volunteer for a tourist railroad, and I'm keeping their maintenance away diesel engines running, and so I've still got my hand in it. But when I started out, it was very much kind of a fluke. Because I had, nobody in my family was a mechanic. My dad, was like the anti-mechanic, poor man. And so, and because the vocational classes were not available to us in the junior and high schools to women, I just never had the opportunity, even though I really knew I wanted to do it. So I
Did you?
started
You
out.
always knew ever since you were
I
young, huh?
absolutely did. I remember being a little girl and watching two guys struggling at doing something mechanically, and sitting there watching them, thinking to myself, I wouldn't do it that way. I mean, it was like I just understood what it was they were trying to do. And
Interesting.
so I really think that, a lot of it is kind of given to you at birth. You're either mechanically inclined or you're not, and that's perfectly fine. But if
Yeah.
you are mechanically inclined, it's not exclusive to men or women.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of teaching a diesel engine apprenticeship class for 10 years. And the women students that came in, unfortunately, were not looking to get into the trades, but they had equipment that had diesel engines and
Mm.
wanted to be familiar with them. And they were all fabulous mechanics. And it just killed me that, they had other careers. So I'm like, would be killer in this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find a lot of women wind up going to school and going to classes because they want to learn how to use their own stuff, right? How to fix their own car, fix their own truck. And then sometimes they wind up falling in love with it, despite themselves. That was kind of my path. I didn't intend to become a mechanic. I didn't know I would be into it, but I kind of fell in love with it despite myself.
Very definitely. Once I was given the opportunity, and that's kind of my favorite word is opportunity, because it just goes across pretty much, all aspects of life. If you're not given the chance,
Yeah.
you really can never prove not only to yourself, but to everybody else, that this is a natural fit. And I think that's why it's such a shame that the vocational classes disappeared out of our schools because, because again, when I came through it, we at least had vocational classes, but they were on the guys' curriculum, not on the girls' curriculum. But then they disappeared for everybody.
Yeah.
And I was able, well, I won't go down that rabbit hole. Just to know that I am an advocate for getting our vocational classes back into our high schools for sure, because unfortunately, a lot of times education is wasted on the young. When you're going through school, you don't really understand what it can do for you. But three of the journeyman mechanics that I apprenticed under in the 80s, if it hadn't have been for their vocational classes, and we're talking about men that were in high school in the 50s and 60s, if they hadn't have had their vocational classes to keep interested in
Mm,
school, they would have dropped out.
right.
And so I truly believe it would really help with that. If the kids today weren't, the only choices that they were given was to go to college and no other choices, because as we know, from the minute you wake up till the minute you go to bed, literally everything you touch is brought to you by a blue collar worker.
Mm.
You turn
Truth.
on the lights, you use the toilet, you turn on the air conditioning, you get in your car, you take rapid transit, you take
Yes.
an elevator, no matter what it is that you need to get through your day, it takes a blue collar worker to do it.
Cheers to that. Absolutely. It's so perfectly said. Everything we touch is brought to you by a blue collar worker. And it's amazing to me that blue collar workers don't get more respect societally, considering that fact, right? The world would cease to exist. Like everything would stop if it weren't for all us blue collar workers.
There's a definite bias out there. Again, I had the privilege of teaching at the community college level for 10 years. By the way, concurrently, I was still the lead engine mechanic at my workplace. So I had two
Oh, wow.
full-time jobs for 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
And the reason why I would put myself through that is because I believe so strongly in apprenticeship. And if I hadn't have taken it, because unfortunately, a lot of mechanics go in one direction, academics go in another. And in order to teach for the community college, you have to have a certain amount of, credits.
Mm.
And so luckily I had taken a lot of community college classes. So I was very close to getting a degree. And so it was close enough, that they could bend a couple of rules for me and allow me to teach a class that they had 60 people signed up and no
Oh wow.
instructor for it. But
Wow.
the thing I was going to say is that I would go to a function and introduce myself as a college instructor, and people would be leaning in and wanting to talk to me. And when the same group of people, I would introduce myself as a heavy duty truck mechanic, and they would be leaning back from me like they were going to get dirty.
Mm.
And, so it goes to what you just said, that there's this kind of natural bias
Yeah.
about a profession that everybody actually needs
Yeah.
and doesn't receive the respect that it should.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because we get to, as women in these trades, we get to deal with two sets of stereotypes and judgment, right? We get to deal with the judgment of our trade, and then we get to deal with the judgment of being a woman within these trades. So the judgment by the trade, so to speak, right?
Absolutely right. Well,
So
one of the ways that I've found to deal with that, because uh, again, when you're starting into the trades, you're kind of like a lamb thrown to the wolves. You really are kind of figuring it out on a daily basis. And, I mean, I was fortunate because, I was almost 5'10", and, I didn't weigh a lot. At that point, I weighed about 150 pounds, so I was still pretty trim. But I think a lot of guys, because I was as tall as I was, they didn't want to worry about getting their butt beat by a girl, by giving me too much trouble. So I had that advantage, I think. Not that I came on heavy like that, but I think it just helps,
mm,
if you have a certain amount of size to you.
yeah,
But the other thing is I basically just shut up and did the work. I just didn't really feel like I needed to, talk a good repair, let them see a good repair.
right.
And by doing so, I think it helped kind of launch me into being able to see how well that worked, because you could see the lack of respect early on. I'd
Mm,
pull up in my 65 Chevy pickup truck with my toolbox, at that time my little Craftsman toolbox, in the back of my truck, and the guys would be poking each other in the ribs and laughing
mm.
and all that stuff. And then they would see me untying my trucker's hitch and going, "Oh God, she knows how to tie a trucker's hitch." And, then I could jump on the forklift and get the toolbox off all by myself and yada, yada, yada. And, after they would, see me do my work for a bit, you kind of went from being the goat
Mm.
to the go-to person. Now, they'd make sure nobody else was looking, but then they'd come over and, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And so, and I think that worked really well, because, you obviously didn't have other women to talk to. You just had to rely on the journeyman, mostly older men that weren't threatened by you as a young person wanting to learn the trade. A lot of times the guys more around your age felt a little more threatened, and so they weren't quite as forthcoming with the information.
Mm.
But the older guys, they loved it. Loved
I,
having women in the shop, and it really worked well that way.
I love it. And I love that you bring up that they would often come to you when nobody else was looking, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, they didn't want any witnesses to that.
Like they've come around, they respect you, but they don't want anybody else to know. That's fantastic. So
Very,
let's go.
very.
Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you actually wind up getting into it? What started all this? I mean, you obviously, as a little kid, had that mechanical ability and that interest. You didn't have the opportunity initially, and like you said, like everything is about opportunity, and it's easy to say just let your work do the talking, but if you don't ever have the opportunity to let your work do the talking,
That's right.
how did you create the opportunity? How did you learn? How did this start?
So, I started very traditionally. Uh, Women do office work or whatever. And so I didn't want to start out, not that flipping hamburgers isn't a perfectly good job, but, I wanted to start at a different place. So uh, I don't know if they have them anymore, but it was like a job agency. You'd give them like 40% of your first 3 months of your paycheck to get into a little better job.
Oh,
And so the job had to do with a factory that manufactured things. And so I was put in the what was called the print room. So I would run the blueprints for the people out in the shop that were running the machines.
okay.
And I had a male coworker. Very long story short, I was handed his paycheck by mistake and thought I had received a raise until I saw it was his paycheck, and asked my boss, it's none of my business, but I'm his lead person. And, I've been here longer, all that. Why, he make more money? And this is in 1972. He looked at me dead in the face, said, well, duh, he's a man, automatically, he's going to get paid more money. So, now I'm faced with, holy crow, here I couldn't take vocational classes because I wasn't a man. And now I'm going to get paid less because I'm not a man. And so luckily, the only woman that worked out in the shop came by, said that she was retiring in a few months and that I should put in for her workbench. And I
Oh,
had
there was a
never
woman
thought of
working at the shop
that.
already?
This woman worked on the assembly bench out in the shop, and this is affiliated with the machinists union.
Okay.
And so she said, you get out here and get in the union and you'll never have to worry about that again. You'll get paid the same as the guys. That is all I had to hear. I didn't know what the job was. I knew nothing about blue collar work. My dad was in management. I'd never had any exposure. And that's one of the things that I would really stress for women, just taking a quick aside, is that I tell the union, if you're going to market to anybody, go talk to women, because there's no reason why, women who in a lot of cases are single parents and, got lots of mouths to feed and have a life to live, why they shouldn't be making the same amount of money as a man does, and all they have to do is just shift their focus. Instead of the white collar work, let's look over here at the blue collar stuff. But in any case, that started my career. I started on an assembly bench. We went out on strike for 8 weeks. I was on the negotiating committee. After 8 weeks, they all wanted to go back to work, and the company said, well, you can all come back except for her. And that's what I found, that sometimes solidarity only runs paycheck deep, because 350 people went back to work and left me standing outside the gate. And so, but that started me to be able to go down to the waterfront, make more money, and my just began advancing from there. So, container, I was a mechanics helper, container mechanic, welder fabricator, refrigeration mechanic,
Oh my
just kept
gosh.
moving through, just moving through the jobs. And then I decided that, I wanted to serve an actual apprenticeship. And
Okay.
so I found that if I changed jobs one last time, that I could serve an actual state recognized apprenticeship. And because I was already a journeyman just from years in the trade, but I actually wanted that apprenticeship and that education. And that's how I got to teach the apprenticeship class, because when the instructor retired and they said, wait a minute, who are you going to get to teach this class? And we got 60 people. He said, oh, Lacey will do it. And so 3 weeks before the class started, I get a phone call. Hey, we understand you're going to teach our class for us. Hello, what? But by that point, I'd become a diesel mechanic and never looked back.
I love it. I love that your motivation was this like indignancy about the fact that women weren't getting paid the same as men, and that you found a way to do that, and then the rest is history. It's a definitely a different story that I've heard before, and I absolutely love, I love your attitude about it. Was there was there a point where you decided, like, once you were in it, where you were like, yes, this, I love this, and I don't care how much crap I get from other people. I love this, and I this is what I want to do the rest of my life? Or did it just kind of happen?
Well, believe it or not, again, I was in the trades for 40 years, and after I'd been in for about 17 years, I woke up one day and I thought to myself, I've actually made it. I feel like I actually belong. I mean, people have stopped treating me like the other,
Mm.
and that was kind of shop wide. But it took a very, very long time because, and I don't blame the guys because, if you're raised in a patriarchal setting where, women don't have the kind of roles that foster that kind of independence of thought and speech and action, um, they don't really know what to do with that, and most of them would leave me alone. The ones that did mess with me, initially got under my skin, because again, you're young and dumb and you don't know any better. And so, I would be filled with absolute rage by the time I would leave the workplace. I loved the work. I loved the inanimate objects that I worked on, but, just couldn't quite understand how to get to, the flesh and blood, that was giving me a bad time. So what I found was really kind of a fail safe, and I know it'll sound kind of weird, but I would basically just let it out because it had to be something really physical. And I just saw not too long ago that they have a room where you can like grab a plate and break it.
Yes.
In my case, it was just, I would just scream. I would just scream and just let out this frustration. But more importantly, I would write it down, and I would
Mm.
write down witnesses, and I would write down times and names just in case it ever would come in handy.
Mm.
And there were two things twice in my life when push came to shove, I could get up real close to somebody and whisper in their ear, I've got all of this written down with all
Mm.
the times, dates, and witnesses. Now, if you want to keep going down this road, and both times the people backed off. And
Mm.
the good thing about it was I could just let it go. Once I had it written down, I could just let it go. And
Interesting.
so then you're not burdened with it. You're not having to carry it. You scream, you write it down, and then you let it go. And then the
I
next day
love it.
you say good morning to everybody and you just start, because it's like the class or the schoolyard bully. If they can't see that they're getting to you, it's no fun for them anymore. And they go find somebody, or they actually go back to work. But, they go find somebody else to pick on. And
Yeah.
it really worked. It worked really, really well. And I would really encourage, the ladies out there that, sometimes get to a point where they just don't know what else to do. It works. It really works
I
because,
love it.
but between just physically letting it out and getting rid of the rage, and then by writing it down, it's like, I guess, like writing in a diary. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be a lot, but you just forget about it because
Mm.
you've got it written down. You don't have to carry it with you anymore.
I love that. I love that. Scream, write it down, let it go. And what a powerful, like, just quiet strength to be able to whisper that in somebody's ear. Like, I've documented all of this. Like, that's a beautiful quiet power move right there. I love it. I have to ask, where are you doing the screaming? Are you like going out in the back somewhere where nobody can hear you?
Well,
Are you doing
believe
it
it
right in
or
the middle of the
not,
shop?
I because I would just, walk in my house and close the door and scream. So, because most of the people in the neighborhood, I work graveyard
Oh.
for a lot of those years. So they were all at work. So I could get away with this screaming and not scare anybody and have them calling the cops, because by the time I got home, they were all at work.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I think as you're driving down the freeway, just open the window and scream, and no one's going to know where it came from. But I'll tell you what, it really works. And the good news is, by writing it down and documenting everything, uh, it as you said, it kind of gives you that confidence
Mhm.
that no matter what comes your way, ultimately you still have the power. They're not taking the power away from you. You're retaining the power, because generally, you know, people are just mean spirited, and they just do and say things, and they're not really cognizant of the fact that they're putting themselves in jeopardy, because no workplace is going to put up with this stuff. And especially today, when I went through early on, there weren't a lot of protections for women, so you kind of just were, fending for yourself. But now all the protections are out there. But I always wanted to hesitate, looking like like I was running to HR for protection, or something
Mhm.
like that. Again, probably, because maybe of my size, maybe because of the kind of work that I was willing to do, because I always insisted at starting at the bottom, whatever the absolute dirtiest, crappiest work that there was. That's where I wanted to start, because I didn't want anybody thinking that, you know, I wasn't willing to start at the bottom and work my way up. And so, by doing that, I was really able to, at that point, be able to kind of own what my situation was at work, because I wasn't afraid of any of the work, and because I wasn't afraid of any of the people.
Mm.
I really could enjoy every moment of it. And I did. I enjoyed the trades so much. And it hurts me to believe that a lot of women have had to leave the trades because of the harassment that
Yeah.
they have experienced. And it's completely understandable when women do feel like they need to go ask for help. But if you can find a way to just handle it under your own terms, it's very empowering when you can do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. It's heartbreaking knowing how many women I know it's only March and I've already had conversations with 4 women who've left the trades. And
Mm,
several this year alone, and several more who are considering it. Um and I love your approach for dealing with it. It's unfortunate that we still need an approach to deal with it, right? That
absolutely.
that's still an issue. But I love that you've held on to your love for the work, and for the trades, despite, I'm sure I dealt with a ton of kind of people not happy about me being there when I started out 20 some odd years ago. You coming in 40 years, into the industry, longer than that since you got started. It's like, how did you hold on to that love for it? And was there ever a time where you thought this is not worth it?
Absolutely. But I guess the thing that really kind of inspired me to continue on was, I guess you can kind of call it, orneriness. When you've tried for as long as I did to get the opportunity, I wasn't about going to let them run me out.
Mm.
And so, it was just kind of stubbornness on my part, because I knew I was good. When I rebuilt an engine, I would take it out on the dyno and stuff my foot into it and try to blow the engine up that I just got done rebuilding from the main bearings up. And, my trucks always went out and never came back on the hook, which a lot of the other guys couldn't claim. And, I knew I was good. And so it was just kind of a, in your face attitude that I developed over a period of time, always being sweet and nice naturally. But,
Naturally.
it was almost kind of a point of pride knowing that I irritated people because it was more of more instead of a resentment, I think it was jealousy.
Mm.
And you can disarm a lot of what people uh, point toward you by, I feel, defining it in a more correct way. Uh, because why else would they go out of their way to mess with somebody that didn't do anything at all to them other than show up to go to work?
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, most of the time there was one person standing at their toolbox ready to go in their coveralls, no cup of coffee in their hand, ready for the foreman to give them their work assignment, and that was me. And they resented that because I think it made them look bad, because they weren't ready to go to work.
Right.
And I've always been a strong believer, if you're gonna fight for good wages and benefits, it works both ways. 40 hours of work for 40 hours of pay, because no one's going to feel good about giving 40 hours of work and they only give you 35 hours of pay. The boss doesn't want 35 hours of work for
Right.
40 hours of pay. It's a two-way deal. So i'm,
Yeah.
I'm kind of old fashioned that way, I guess.
No, and you're very right. And it's interesting. It is definitely, I think, jealousy, like you say, and it's interesting because I think the men having taking issue with women being in their territory, so to speak, right, in their space, um, they create the fact that we often are driven to perfection, and then they resent the fact that we're achieving, right? So
Well,
it's
you
because
got to be
they're
twice
harassing
as
us.
good. You got to be twice as good just to be considered equal,
Yes, exactly,
is
and then they're mad
basically.
that we're so good.
And like you said, they're the ones that kind of drove us to that degree. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good observation. Good for you. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's exactly right.
How was your family? How did they react when you, decided to switch from, working in the office to working out in the field with your hands on such dirty things?
Well, I was really surprised. I didn't know how especially my dad, would react because, at first he wanted me to actually be a model.
Oh,
He had taken me to a modeling agency when I was, 16, 17 years old
wow.
because he thought I was the next whatever. And the woman sitting in front of me never stopped smiling. I mean, she had this smile like plastered onto her face. And I'm looking at this just thinking, there is no way that I want a lifestyle that I have to be this cheerful all the time. And so uh, I, so the modeling career went out and then I was the first of my family that actually got the grades to go to college, and they were all excited. We finally got one to go to college. And I was the last of three kids, and I just wanted my mom and dad to go back to being a Mr. and Mrs. and not a mom and dad. And so I just wanted to get out of the house, get out of their hair, uh, have the kids quit costing them money. And I was perfectly capable of making money on my own. And so
That
uh, I was surprised at the amount of pride
mm,
that I actually overheard them a couple of times. They were absolutely uh, giddy with the fact that they had a daughter in a non-traditional trade.
I
And
love
I
that.
think it was because of the reaction that they got from people.
Mm.
I mean, because the reaction that they got was, really? Oh my goodness, Linda Lacey is doing this? We just can't believe it. And I think they really thought that that was uh something to feel a lot of pride over, was that
Yeah.
it was something different.
That's awesome that you had a family that even back then was able to look at it as a source of pride rather than seeing it as a negative when they got that reaction that you had that support at home. I feel like that was probably pretty uncommon.
It wasn't anything that I know that they were disappointed, that I didn't go to college, but they understood, what my reasoning was. They respected that. And I think overall they were happy that, we didn't end up with a bunch of college debt, and not to disparage people with, that go that route, because we certainly need, college educated people too for those kinds of jobs. But for me, it was just time to, go out and start making some money. And it turned out to be and I think that's one of the things that I would want to make sure that people understand, is that the trades can deliver the wages, the benefits, the working conditions, the pension, all of the things, and without the college debt, that can just deliver such an incredible living. And if nothing else, the best thing is being able to go to work in Levi's in a t-shirt every day. Because one of the very first things that happened in the office is I snagged my nylons on the first day of work, and that's how much money I made an hour, was what it cost me to buy a new pair of nylons.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, oh no, this is this job's going to cost me money. And so, yeah, to be able to just, wear Levi's and a t-shirt to work every day and have my coveralls ready to go, that was a blessing. I mean, really, if you don't like having to dress up every day of your life, if for no other reason, blue collar work is the way to go.
I love it. Yep, you don't have to pick out a new outfit every day. You don't have to
That
look
is correct.
nice. You just put on the uniform and go to work.
There you go. Absolutely.
I love your independent spirit, and it sounds like you've had it since you were like since you came out. Like you came out this way, just fiery and independent and fierce. It's just an amazing attitude. I love it.
Well,
How
when I was young, people would see what I did, and they would equate me to, at that time the terminology was woman libber. Oh, you're one of those women libbers. And I said, well, actually, I said, not that I'm not, but I'm actually a tomboy that never grew out of it. And when I was, I never played with dolls. I never, whatever the girls were doing didn't really attract me. When the boys were out, playing the games out on the playground, and that's where I kind of found myself gravitating. And I found out I could be competitive. And it just was kind of a natural thing to just get in there and, you know, just I just enjoyed doing what the guys did, as opposed to what girls found interesting.
Mm.
And so that was just kind of a natural thing. And so again, I believe that, we're all born with certain traits, and some people, they're maternal and all that. I'm very maternal, but with four-legged critters. Uh, Human babies make me break out into a sweat, and so,
so you never had children, okay?
never married, never, kids.
Okay.
But I, like I said, I've adopted and been a guardian over, many, many, many different four-legged and slithering critters. I love them all, and so that's kind of where my maternal instinct went,
That's
was
that's all right. That's all
taking
right.
care of the little ones that way.
Yeah, as you've pointed out a couple of times, and as I think is absolutely right. Like we all have different interests, we all have different capabilities, and at the end of the day, whether you want to call it women's lib or whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, it's we should all have the opportunity to do whatever the thing is that makes us happy. And regardless, right? It's not that being a mother is a bad thing or being a mother is a
That
good
is
thing. It's that
correct.
we all deserve the choice to decide which life it is that we want for ourselves. So,
And especially mothers that want to get into the trades. Absolutely. Again, you know, have while I was teaching, I was given the opportunity to design a class to help women who had very challenging backgrounds to change the trajectory of their life. And
mm,
we taught them how to drive forklifts, and we did a partnership with the food bank,
oh,
and
awesome.
they went out and they became warehouse women,
That's
and
awesome.
it changed their lives. And it just really showed me, when women are given the chance to grow, it's so empowering, and it really touched me to a point that I get bluthery every time I even think about it, because when you see somebody take their first paycheck that they've earned, and know that they never have to look backwards again, that they can just move forward with their life, their family's life, is fabulous. And I would want every woman, regardless of whatever path she has started out with her life, to always be given the opportunity to grow in the direction that speaks to her.
Mm. That's awesome. Very powerful. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for doing that work. It is incredibly powerful to be able to pass on and give a skill, and that I think is the beauty of the trades, is that it is this skill that's in our hands that nobody can ever take for us from us. Like once you learn it, it's yours for life, and you will always have a way to support yourself. You will always have a way to make a living, and I think that's just an incredibly powerful confidence thing.
Yeah, I mean, the people that I would teach, I'd say, we live on the coast, and so that's one thing, but you could move to the center of the country and demand the top wage there. I mean, it'll be different than what the top wage is here, but
Yeah.
you're always going to be able to be at the top of your wage because of your expertise. And so, you can never know too much. The more you learn, the more value added you're adding to your marketability, and like you said, the self-confidence of being able to just walk into the workplace and know that anything that's thrown at you, you're going to be able to handle it, and
Yeah.
sometimes with one hand tied behind your back.
So I have to ask, when you were, starting out in some of these jobs, I'm sure that the apprehension was high, and there were a lot of people who didn't want you there, and you weren't allowed to take schooling at first. So how did you learn? Was it just trial and error? Did you find the people who were willing to teach? How did you learn the actual skills and get to where you're at today?
Well, that was interesting, because the first opportunity I had to actually again, I worked on an assembly bench, and oh, by the way, the as I was working on the assembly bench, um, one of the bosses would stand there and uh, talk some of the most sexually explicit garbage at me, hoping to embarrass me and make me go away. And that's where I kind of learned to give it out as well as receive. Not that I'm proud of that, but sometimes you just have to not shrink,
Yeah.
and develop the opportunity to kind of turn it back on people. Never never stopping your work. But eventually, like I said, the bullies realize that they're not getting to you, and they will eventually go away. I mean, that has always been my experience. But the thing that I did was, because people could see that I was serious about wanting to learn, they just show up. Men can't help themselves. They want to teach you what they know. They can't help it. They can't help themselves. The ones that are the good guys, they can't help themselves. And they will come by and they'll say, I noticed you doing it like this. I have found that if you do it like this, it's better, faster, safer, whatever. And so that kind of made me realize that, oh, okay, mentorship is a good way to go here. And I think that's one of the reasons why, again, I just always felt that the best way to do it was just to show up and go to work and have people take me seriously, because then they want to come to you and teach you things, instead of you coming in and dictating, oh, I want you to take that calendar down, or I don't like the way you're talking, or, you know, th- unfortunately, I mean, it would be wonderful to be able to do that. And I know we have those protections now, but when I started out, if I had done that right off the bat, I don't think there would have been a guy to a man that would have had anything to do with me. But just because I would just kind of let stuff roll off my back and not let it bother me, eventually the guys would see, okay, well, she's here. She looks like she's serious about wanting to learn. Doggone it, I'm going to help her learn. And then again, when you become an apprentice, you actually have journeyman mechanics that you're assigned to and work alongside. And then those people, again, you're telling them, hey, let me scrape your gaskets, all of the let me clean your parts off, in the solvent, tank. I mean, all the stuff that nobody wants to do. You volunteer for all of that work, and as soon as they can see you're serious and you really want to start from the bottom and learn it all the way up, it just happens. It just happens organically.
That's
It's
fantastic.
a wonderful thing about human nature that I believe, to people's core, they really do want to help. They just kind of have to get through that initial feeling that they don't quite understand how to deal with it, because they've never seen a woman like you before, and they really don't know how to process it. And so it's in my case, it was better to just kind of let it happen organically.
I love it. Oh, very inspiring. And I know, I'm sure it's often easier said than done. And that's where the screaming comes in. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah, there's always going to be those days
yeah,
when,
absolutely.
I mean, we're only human and we can only take so much.
Hmm.
But screaming is a good way to go. Again, uh, even if it has to be in such a way that, I mean, you obviously don't want your neighbors getting freaked out or whatever, but that's just what I found. I mean, maybe, you find something to break that, isn't going to be too expensive over a period of time, but just get it out of you. Get that poison, because it's poison, and just get it
Yes.
out of you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Now, we don't have a ton of time left because this
Yes.
hour always goes by way quicker than I want it to. But I'm sure that some people are curious, as to why we have you blurred out and anonymous. And I know that that is a story that kind of connects to your trade as well, and your career path. Do you mind at least briefly touching on
Yeah, not at
what
all.
happened?
No, again, because early on, a lot of, well, all of the men that I worked with, I was something that they'd never seen before, and most of the men connected with me in a very healthy way. There was an individual that connected with me in a very unhealthy way, and actually became a stalker. And so I literally went to work one day and then they never saw me again because I found out through my father that he did some research and had found that this person had a violent history. So even though the person didn't present that way, I knew that there was that in his background, and I just didn't figure that I needed to put my parents through all that worry. So it was just better. I wasn't getting the training that I wanted in that neck of the woods anyway. They had their one woman apprentice and they weren't going to consider another one for another 4 years. And so to be able to move on, that just gave me the little extra push that I needed. So I threw the dog in the back seat and took off. And, my uncle was able to put me up for a little bit until I got my job on the waterfront, and
Wow.
away we went. But
Wow.
it's just better to just do it this way. I didn't do anything illegal. I'm not a bank robber. I'm not on the run. I'm not anything like that. I'm just a victim of somebody that just wasn't quite uh, able to handle somebody that they were just fascinated by in a very unhealthy way. And
Yeah.
so it happens. And, I took the steps that I did again, uh, you know, doing it my way, and never regretted it because I found so much more opportunity where I ended up.
Mm.
And I
I appreciate.
appreciate you giving me that opportunity to discuss that because it does happen, and it's not the end of the world, but you need to make some very brave choices.
Yeah.
But sometimes opportunity presents itself in really unusual ways. And like I said, it really was probably one of the best things ultimately, because I'm not sure I would have ever been brave enough to
Mm.
have made some of the moves that I did without kind of having that extra
Mm.
incentive, to
Interesting.
protect my family and get out of Dodge.
Yeah. I love that you always find the silver lining in things, and yet I know that I mean, having a stalker is can be an incredibly scary thing, and especially knowing that your stalker had a violent past, and it, it I know a lot of women deal with this in to various degrees, right? I mean, obviously, there's tons of women who deal with stalkers in general, but women in the trades, we attract attention. We stand out because we're one of the few that are female. And sometimes that attention is positive, and sometimes that attention is very much not positive, and can get scary. And so I appreciate your willingness to come on and do this podcast despite that fear. And I'm so grateful to be able to hear your story. And I want to adopt you. Would you like to be my surrogate mom? You're awesome. um,
uh,
I
anything that I can do to help any of the sisters out there or the brothers as well, because this trade is fabulous. And I just would encourage everybody listening, whether you're actively working, just thinking about it, dip your big toe in and get a taste for it, because I have a feeling that it'll take you over. If it's in your DNA to do it, you'll discover it.
love it. I love it. I normally, my last question is always to ask you what your advice to other women in the industry is, but you've given so much already in this hour. I don't need to ask you that. You have been so full of inspiration and great advice, and just leading by example. And I hope you know how many women across the country who you may never know and who may never know you are indebted to you, and other women like you who really paved the path for us to be able to be here. Um, I'm so in awe of you. I think your attitude is phenomenal, and I'm so impressed with everything that you've done and your perspective on things. So I hope you know how much of an impact you've made throughout your career.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. It's really been a huge privilege, to be able to be on the podcast with her two hands.
We so appreciate it. Folks at home, I hope you guys enjoyed meeting Lacey as much as I did. I know I'm going to continue to stay in touch with her. Her story is absolutely incredible. I Gosh, such a testament to tenacity and her courage and her ability to just keep going. There is a tremendous amount of opportunity within the trades, as she said. It is a great career path, and I could not agree more that no matter how much crap has happened in the world, and no matter how much crap happens within the trades, and no matter how much um, BS she had to deal with, and that we all often have to deal with, that we still absolutely love the trades and think it's a great place to continue to pursue a career and a career path. So I truly, I hope you guys enjoyed meeting Lacey as much as I did. I would say that you should follow her along, but she is not on social media because she is free of all of that, and gets to just live her life doing wonderful things, and enjoying her life. But I thank her so much for being a part of this. I thank you guys all so very much for being here, for tuning in to listen to her story and hanging out with us for the evening. And make sure you come back next week. We have another incredible tradeswoman for you to meet, and to get to know. And just thank you guys for being part of this journey. People like Lacey paved the way. There's so many young women who are coming up in the trades. We still have so much more work to do to make the trades a place where women really have a place, where we don't have to fight for that place, where we don't have to go back to our house and scream, or scream in our car on the drive home. We have a lot of work to do. But we have come a long way, and you guys are part of helping us normalize this by being a part of watching these episodes, by sharing, by commenting, by liking. All of that helps more people meet these incredible women and be exposed to them. So thank you guys. Come back next week, every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Every Monday night, we also release an archive episode. This was episode 181. So 181 amazing, talented, incredible, kick-ass, inspiring women that you can go back and listen to their stories and meet them and hear all about their journeys. So thank you guys for your support. Come back next week. Until next time, be good to yourselves, be good to one another, and we'll see you later. Bye, guys.